late in the evening, as you can hear with the crickets. And this is the part 2 of the board that we're building. And for this, what we're going to do is we're going to go over building the loop box, okay, that we were talking about. That will be a 2-loop, which will basically work with the phaser and the flanger and allow for the phaser and flanger to come in and out via a momentary switch, which we have over here. By momentary, I mean that the switch, it doesn't click like a normal switch would and hold in one position, then click and go to the other position. This, you would have a normally closed position, and then when you press it down, it goes into the other position. And then when you release it, it goes back. So that allows you to turn on the flanger and off very quickly. It'd be like bing, bing, bing. So I like to use those. And this is a double pole, double throw. You know, nothing very fancy, momentary switch. You can get those at any sort of pedal supply place like Small Bear or Love My Switches or something like that. So you'll need a couple of those, right? We got 2 of them, 1 for each. We've got some jacks. So you're going to need an input jack, obviously, an output, right? And then you're going to need a pair of send and returns. So send, return, send, return. So we've got, what, 6 jacks? I'm using these Switchcraft type. I like them. I think they're good. They have a case ground, and I think the ground will be fine. There's no need to really get too complicated with the grounding scheme. Wherever the jacks hit the chassis, that's fine. That'll work just great. The other thing you're going to need to build this, the way we're doing it, is 2 2.1 DC ports. So the reason why we got the DC port and why we got 2 of them is, number one, this box is also going to contain this right here, which is a buffer unit. This buffer unit is really easy to get. It's a Jack Orman for AMZ buffer. You can order them online. They come, you know, I think either with the parts or you can buy the parts separately. And Jack Orman's site, you can Google that. He's also a wealth of information in terms of, you know, pedal projects, electronics theory, some of that. A great all-around guy and a great site. And these buffers really work great, and I've used them quite a bit. And we're using the buffer basically to get over the noise floor of some of these pedals, especially the flanger. Without a buffer in front of the flanger, it tends to have that pronounced jet sort of noise when put in front of a high gain amp. But if you've got a buffer pedal, these kinds of pedals, you know, if you got a buffer unit, they tend to quiet down as your signal strength then overrides the noise floor inside the amp and inside the unit rather, and it gets quiet. So we're going to be putting a buffer in there. So we've got the 2 jacks. One is obviously to power the jack, or rather power the board. And the other one I'm going to use as basically a convenience out to power the flanger. Now this board runs on 18 volts, and so does the flanger. And my power supply only has 1 18-volt out. So I would find it convenient just to run from my power supply into this buffer, let's say, loop box and interface. Run the DC into this and then just run straight out into the MXR. Now the current draw for both these together are way below what the rated current draw is for that port on the power supply, so there's no problem running them in series like that. So we'll have those 2 things. So we've got our switches, our DC ports, our buffer board, our case, and 6 jacks. And that's basically all we're going to need for building this unit. Now the first thing that we always do is to lay everything out, so that way you know that, you know, when you're drilling your holes, that all of your parts are going to fit, that there's not going to be interference between the 2, and you can do some, you know, some sort of planning before you go ahead and destroy your box. And as in the other board builds that I've done, or anything really for that matter, I like to use obviously masking tape to sort of run around the perimeter of the board, or perimeter of the case, right? So that way I can draw my lines of where I want everything to be, all the drill points on the tape instead of on the box. And if I make a mistake, I could basically just peel the tape off. And had a little piece of schmutz under there. That's a very technical term, schmutz. You can peel the tape off and replace it and redo your layout, and you won't have a case that's covered in magic marker or whatever it is you're going to use, pen or pencil. It's also very easy to draw on tape versus the raw aluminum. And the third reason would be that as you drill, it protects the case itself from a whole lot of scratches while you're machining it, while you've got it on the drill press, while you've got the chips from the hole being drilled out and flying all over the place. It will tend to protect your metal finish, the finish on this, which is a nice tumbled kind of finish, so that it looks good when you put it on your board. If you don't care about something like that, that's fine too. You can just go ahead and do it the way you like to, but I like to do it this way with the tape on there. So we've got the tape all set up, and what I'm going to try to do basically is make everything a very short, sort of convenient cabling, right? So what I'm going to do is probably put our stack our DC jacks like this, or maybe a little bit off center, or just find a way so that we can use a short cable run. I might put it on the side here so it comes from the power supply, but I'm definitely going to have one jack here, so I have a very short cable run to the next point. I'm going to stack, I think, these as well. Not have them directly side by side, but a little bit of an angle there to conserve space. So we'll have one set here, one set here, the ins and outs here, and then each one of these switches as close as I can get them without touching or anything, right? So it'll probably look something like this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause it here, and I'm going to draw out the case, lay everything out where I want it, and then we'll be back with the results and move on to the next step. Okay.